Welcome to episode 55 of Project Geekology, the only podcast that has bathed in the living waters. I am one half of your host, Anthony, and joining me as always is...
Dakota, and I feel so fresh and clean after bathing in the living waters beneath the mines of Mandalorian. You know, I just feel renewed, feel like I'm on a spiritual high, and I'm at peace with my people, finally. You know, after a couple of years of just running around
living
with this...
exile.
Yeah, living in exile. No, but we're here to talk about Mando Season 3. We have had podcasts on Mando Season 1, Mando Season 2, and Book of Boba Fett, and we are finally getting around to talking about Mando Season 3, and we're really excited about it.
Right, it's been a long time since we've been here.
Star Wars, you mean?
No, Mando.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a while since we've gotten a Mando season, and we know part of that being the fact that Pedro Pascal was in The Last of Us.
Part of it was, yes, definitely that. I also think a little bit of it was them trying to push Book of Boba Fett in between seasons, which allowed them to push it back a little bit, which is fine. You know, I always love Star Wars, good or bad. And there was a little bit of both in that show. And there's a little bit of both in this show. So we're going to talk about like what we dislike about this season of Mando. But first, Anthony, what have you been up to these past 2 weeks?
Man, I feel like I've been up to a good bit. So I've been running through Smallville.
What?
I've been running through it. You know, believe it or not, I've gotten far in Smallville, but I never completely finished Smallville.
Oh, so you've never gotten all the way to the end?
I'll watch a bunch of Smallville, and then I'll get burnt out on it, and then never come back to it.
Right.
But this time around, I've lasted a lot longer, and I think it's because of the way that I have been watching. I'll watch a bit of Smallville, and then I'll kind of hop onto something else. I'll play video games, or I'll watch another TV show, and then I'll come back to it. You know, I won't completely forget about it. And yeah, I've gotten a lot further this time. I'm finally hitting some episodes that I haven't reached before. I'm about to hit season 7 now, so I'm getting there. Like I've got a few more seasons left.
When did this marathon start?
It's been about maybe a month and a half now.
Holy crap, you went through 7 seasons of television? And this is like back in the day when seasons were like 20 to 22 episodes.
Right, and the episodes are about 45 minutes long, so that's an hour long with... You know, back then that was an hour long with commercials.
Commercials, yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah,
Thank goodness we don't have commercials anymore.
I definitely would love to. I definitely want to cover that show with you at some point. I think
I'm not watching 10 seasons of television for the show, but I will have a retrospective on like my nostalgia for it for sure.
No. Yeah, I don't expect you to go and do that, but there is a lot of. I think that there is a lot to talk about in that show, and
for sure, yeah.
It's one of my favorite childhood shows, and
yeah, man.
And it's crazy how it pretty much started at the beginning of the 2000s and it ended at the end of the 2000s. You know, the beginning 2010 was like the last season. It's definitely like you feel the time that it took place. Like some of the stuff is very dated, but it's very endearing also.
Yeah, what's interesting about early 2000s shows at this point, you know, now that we're 10, 12, 13 years away from the 2000s, is that it's starting to become almost like a period piece in and of itself, you know, like we think of the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s to some degree as having like its own particular feel, but the 2000s definitely had its own feel, especially on television. Jen just started watching The OC for the first time, and I've never seen it, but I've watched a couple scenes and I'm like, wow, remember when people used to dress like that or talk like that? And it was just like, that was that feel. So it's interesting. Yeah, there's a definite nostalgia there. And also, like, you can't really beat around the bush with Smallville. They actually, that show basically started the CW like Arrowverse, you know, like it was the end of Smallville that they realized we need another one of these shows, and that's when Arrow started popping up, and then The Flash the next year, and it just kind of boomed into this huge juggernaut of programming where it was just superheroes left and right on the CW.
Right, and Smallville really had its own kind of verse, not other TV shows,
right,
but it introduced different characters into the show.
They had their own little Justice League, yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. And man, as of recording this past Friday, Star Wars Jedi Survivor came out, and I got that, man. And I've been playing. Oh,
you gotta tell me. So wait, how are you finding time to do both Smallville and Jedi Survivor? Are you sleeping? Have you quit your job for this?
Let me get back to you on that. Well, it's the times that I stop watching Smallville and I play Jedi Survivor that gives me the break that I need from watching Smallville, you know? But I'm knocking like maybe
I got you.
I'll knock maybe a couple episodes a day. Sometimes I'll go like a day or two without watching Smallville because, you know, I want to do something else. But man, did you ever beat Jedi Fallen Order?
I have never beat Jedi Fallen Order, no.
Dude, you need to beat Jedi Fallen Order because I'm going to tell you a little piece of information that's going to want you to play Jedi Survivor. You and I both know how much you love the High Republic.
Oh, yes.
There's High Republic stuff in this game.
I know. What's weird is that I've not beaten Fallen Order. I haven't finished it, rather. I started it, it just kind of like fell by the wayside. As many games do. But when it comes to the Jedi series, there's a book that came out called Battle Scars that I read that one. It was like the interlude between the first game and the second game. So I am pretty familiar with what happens throughout the first game, and I wonder if I can just jump into the second game or if I should I'm trying to debate whether or not I should go back to the first game, go through that, and then start the second game.
Well, it's a fun experience. So for me, I mean, it can be a tough game sometimes because it's what you call a Soulsborne game. You know, it's like one of those types of like Dark Souls, Bloodborne type games, and so it can be a little hard sometimes. And I mean, I even had times where I got stuck on a couple of bosses in particular. But there was one time I eventually just got back onto Jedi Fallen Order, and I finally was able to beat this one boss that just kept on, for some reason, stumping me. And man, I don't regret it. Dude, it's one of the best Star Wars games out there. And that's saying a lot because Knights of the Old Republic is probably my favorite Star Wars game of all Star Wars. Canon and Legends, Knights of the Old Republic is that's the one for me. I would say, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love Battlefront, the old ones and stuff. I had a great time with those. But the Jedi series, Cal Kestis, I really enjoy his character. I feel like even though he's a Jedi and he can tap into very Jedi stuff, he's more relatable as a character when it comes to a Jedi. He's the closest to how it would be if you or I were a Jedi, you know?
Yeah, what I like about Cal from what I've come to gather is that because he was very young during Order 66. He never really got the Jedi experience, and most of his life has been outside of the Jedi Order, and he was cut off from the Force for at least a little bit of that. So he is not only learning to reuse his powers, at least in the first game, he also just doesn't have that Jedi Order mentality anymore. So he's just kind of a normal guy with Jedi powers, which is kind of fun.
It is, and I mean, how can you not like BD1? You know, in a world where there's R2-D2s and BB-8s, BD1 is up there.
BD1's awesome. BD1 is awesome.
And BD1 is, honestly, he's more convenient to have because he's like a little robot that can sit on your shoulder, whereas BB-8 is a rolling ball and R2-D2 is just a massive astromech droid that, honestly, I mean, he has a jetpack and stuff, but if he can't fit in the area,
Both BB-8 and R2 are quite cumbersome to lug around, and C-3PO is way too slow.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Yeah, so BD1 he's up there as far as favorite droids. I don't know. Did you see the Disney release of the BD droid?
Like an actual.
You know how in Disney you can build your own like droid and stuff. They haven't done that yet for the BD1, but they released a remote control BD droid, and it
Looks good.
It kind of looks like a knockoff. Like, it looks like a BD, but, like, with the color scheme and, like, the way that it walks, I'm like, bro, like, I feel like that's a toy that you could pick up at Walmart.
Oh, that's awkward.
And they're charging $100 for $110
Of course.
for it.
Yeah, it's never
That
cheap
is
with Disney.
wild.
Yeah.
So
It's like, I like going to Disney World and doing like the Galaxy's Edge stuff, but I have no plans to build my own lightsaber. I have no plans to build my own droid because that's an easy $100 just in the drain. Or $200
that's $100 for the
lightsaber.
droid and $200 for the lightsaber.
Yeah, it's just down the drain, and I think it's cool. It's a cool experience, but what am I gonna do with it after I leave Disney World? You know?
After you've already spent probably close to $1,000, you know? So it's definitely expensive.
Yeah.
You know, we're going down a rabbit hole, but at least we're going down a relevant rabbit hole.
Yeah, I have some more relevant rabbit hole stuff to talk about in a little bit. So yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it's been running through Jedi Fallen Order and Smallville and getting out our Spider-Man 3 episode, you know? Working
Yeah,
on
if you guys haven't checked out episode 54 of Peak Ecology, we finally finished our Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy of podcasts, so that's been fun.
Oh yeah, it was great to run back on that. But yeah, enough about me. What have you been up to? I saw that you dropped a video the other day.
I did. Yesterday I dropped a video. As of recording, it was yesterday. I had the privilege to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 early.
I saw that. That's insane that you were able to get that access.
Yeah, so it was a press event, but it wasn't like I wasn't the press. I was the plus one. So somebody I knew online had an extra ticket for New York, and I was just like, count me in. So that was fun. The movie's excellent, bro. Excellent. It's getting like a little mixed reviews, but I think from what I can tell, the reviews that are negative are upset that they felt something in a Marvel movie. I don't want you to go and like read bad reviews before seeing a movie, but like I'm reading them, and the issues that they have are like the things that I loved about it. So it's interesting. I don't know. Make up your own mind eventually. I think it's like in the 70s. It's not even like bad reviews, but whatever.
Well, you know me, I'm not really somebody that allows bad reviews to ruin experience for me. I mean, dude, look at Shazam. The second Shazam, I had a fantastic experience. I enjoyed watching that movie.
That's true.
But yeah,
That's
it
true.
kind of was flat critically, and there was not really any buzz around it, but it was a good experience for me.
Yeah. So anyway, I was able to, based on the single viewing, I was able to kind of like gather my thoughts and place it on my MCU timeline. So that's what that video was that I released yesterday. It's just a MCU timeline breakdown of Guardians 3. And so far, the video's doing pretty good.
Oh, that's good.
You know, all things considered. Like, most people haven't seen the movie yet, so I think most people are waiting to watch it after it comes out this weekend. But yeah, it's a spoiler-free video, so if you ever want to check it out, you can do that. The other thing that I want to talk about is this book finally came out, Star Wars Timelines, and it's right up my alley, dude. It's massive. I'm showing Anthony over the webcam. It's 335 pages. Yeah, it's a textbook, but with way more information than any history textbook you've ever experienced. It's nuts what's in this book, bro.
Does it include stuff that recently just came out?
So the cutoff was like just before Andor. So unfortunately, like Andor is not in it, Tales of the Jedi is not in it, Mando season 3 is not in it.
Okay.
But you do have stuff like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett and all the previous Mandalorian stuff, and it's pretty current to the current run of High Republic stuff. So it's chronologically, like it starts from like the Dawn of the Jedi all the way up to the Rise of Skywalker era, and it's like it not only collects like the main events of, you know, the movies, but it also collects the main events of the shows, of the comics, of the novels, of the short stories, of the games, literally everything that's canon. They find a way to, you know, piece together what the main events are in those titles and put it on a chronological timeline that just kind of shows how the galaxy was shaped, and it's so good. So this is a really, really good read. I'm trying to read it like cover to cover without skipping ahead and like looking at what else is in here. But I'm about 40% through at this point, and
without
it's
flipping through it, because it looks like it's so easily to like flip through and read
yes,
random.
it looks. I don't want this to be like a magazine that I pick up and I just go to the stuff that I want to read. I wanna like read it back to cover and like pick apart as much as I can and like, you know, digest as much Star Wars as possible. And it's really cool. It's a really good read. I highly recommend it to pretty much anyone. I do think I've heard a lot of people say that like casual fans will like, this is great for casual fans as well as diehard fans, but I think this leans a lot more into diehard fandom because a lot of the events most people don't even know about, because there's a whole bunch of comic books out there, there's a whole bunch of novels out there, games, stuff like that just like the majority of people will not know where any of these items are coming from. So if I was to give like one issue that I have with the book, it doesn't tell you where the events are happening in. Like if I read I'll just read a random event. Higher Calling. The Bad Batch rescue the Syndulas with clone Captain Hauser's help. Hauser leads a brief-lived clone mutiny against the Empire. Obviously, I know that's from the Bad Batch because it talks about the Bad Batch. But most of the titles don't have the names of the thing in the little event. So I have a hard time occasionally like, where did they get this information from? And I want to know, like, but there's no way that I can look that up in the book. You know, like that's my biggest issue is that, you know, if I was a more casual fan, I wouldn't be able to figure out how to read more about this particular event, you know?
Right. If you saw a piece of information that interested you, you wouldn't know if it came out of Lie of the Jedi, or, you know, like you read something in the High Republic and you're like,
exactly.
Okay, which High Republic book did this come from?
Yeah, is this from a comic book? Is this from a short story? Is this from... And it doesn't tell you.
That's actually really weird.
I thought so too.
Most of the time, whenever there's timeline stuff like that, they elaborate, this happened, and does it not show which, you know, does it not talk about the books at all? It just talks about the events?
It's just purely the events. So sometimes they'll show the cover of the book or whatever, but they don't highlight like the names of the stories that they take place in. So it's a pretty big issue that I have with the book, because there are some points where I'm like, man, that sounds really interesting. I wish I knew how to read more. And I'm pretty versed in Star Wars. I've read a lot of the comics. I've read most of the books, you know, like, so if I'm having those issues, a more casual fan is going to be a lot more frustrated, and they're just going to skip to the stuff that they know.
Absolutely.
You know?
So yeah, that kind of answered a question that I was going to ask, that if a new person were to go through it and read it, would they be able to pretty much catch up, get caught up on whatever it is that they wanted to?
Largely, I say that yes, you can read it and understand most of what's being said. Sometimes the events are written in a very vague way, and if you know what it's from, then you know what it's from. If you don't, then you don't. And I think that's my big issue. It is fun when you get to like the TV shows and the movies and they have the big spreads, and like you obviously know what happens in Revenge of the Sith. So, oh wow, okay, so this happens at this point, and then they show you the breakdown of like what's happening during the Jedi Purge, all like in order. It's really cool. But yeah, anyway, I feel like I should probably make a video about it once I'm done reading it, so I can give a proper review. But so yeah, expect that on Geekritique at some point. But otherwise, I think it's a fantastic book. I think it's easily the most comprehensive guidebook I've ever laid my hands on, and I've laid my hands on a lot of guidebooks. My shelves are full of it.
So overall, you recommend it?
I recommend it. Yes. Is it perfect? Far from it, in my opinion. Yeah, but amazing job what they did. You know, what they were capable of doing, putting all of that into one book. There's a lot of Star Wars out there, and this is no easy feat. So props to them for that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in possibly picking that up myself, so
I do recommend it, and I think it's honestly one of the strongest additions to any Star Wars collector or appreciator's collection, because you can learn so much in this book. It's really impressive. But let's sidebar this so we can talk about the main show, Mando season 3.
Absolutely. Let's get into the main meat of the episode.
So let's go show season by season. Mando season 1, we have Grogu, or we have Din Djarin. He is a bounty hunter, and he takes a bounty to find and take Grogu back to the Empire, and he kind of grows to love this kid, and they kind of form a bond, and it's this big like Western style thing. What are your thoughts on the first season? Just a quick recap.
The first season, I absolutely loved it. It was a strong first live action TV show for Star Wars. And really it had the weight of Disney Plus itself on its shoulders and pretty much carried it, What's amazing is that a lot of people don't remember, but the first episode of Mando aired the same day Disney Plus started. So that was the big draw for Disney Plus back in the day. Yeah, so I agree with all those sentiments. I really loved the first season. It pulled every one of us in. It was the highest, viewed streaming show at the time. It was massive. It was a phenomenon. And, everyone loves Grogu, or Baby Yoda as he was known then. Yeah,
or
and
the child.
It was a bit easier to digest because it didn't have any of the outside forces from a lot of the extended universe of Star Wars. There weren't a bunch of these characters that nobody knew,
That changed a little bit with the second season.
Yes.
We started getting a lot more of, just random players. Boba Fett was introduced or reintroduced. He's alive. Cobb Vanth was a character that was introduced from the Aftermath books. We had Bo-Katan coming back from the Clone Wars. We had Ahsoka coming back from Clone Wars and Rebels, and of course Luke Skywalker at the end of season 2. And what was great about season 2 is that I think season 2 had the best overall arc of like all 3 seasons, in my opinion. Just the idea of getting Grogu from, untrained youngling to a Jedi Master. They wanted to get him into the hands of a Jedi to be with his people.
Right, there was a clear mission, there was a clear goal. In the first season, he had his bounty, and then that quickly changed to him protecting this child. Season 2 was like, okay, now what do I do with this child?
Yeah, and what I like about season 2 is that the cast of characters that was recurring from the first season really was pretty strong. Bill Burr, he was a fantastic character that they brought back for season 2. I'm a little dismayed now that I think about it that he didn't show up in season 3, but I understand, like, there was really no place for him.
His role in that second season was so strong. It was really good.
Yeah, Gina Carano, lover or hater, she was a strong character on the show and definitely a strong presence. So having her back for the second season made sense. The introduction of, Bo-Katan, that was a really cool inclusion in the show. Giancarlo Esposito coming back as the villain for season 2, fantastic. We got more of his idea of like what's going to happen in the future. But then came Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett, and the entire point of like the second season's arc was immediately like reversed, because Grogu was put right back in Din Djarin's hands in those 2 episodes.
Right. I know that the idea of those episodes were it was pretty much the setup for season 3 of why is Grogu with Mando again all of a sudden. But I'm gonna say, I think, and don't get me wrong, look, I love me some Mando. I love seeing Mando, his episodes on the screen, but they damaged the show by doing that. They damaged the show by including Mando season 2.5 in there.
Yeah.
it took the marketing that show had and completely threw it out the window. I honestly feel absolutely like horrible for the actor that plays Boba Fett, because he loves that character. He enjoys playing that character. They took him out of his own show.
And they outshone him. They outshone him. Unfortunately,
yes,
the episodes without him were better for some reason.
Right, and they completely kind of changed his character, and that didn't sit well for a lot of people. But for me, my main gripe is the fact that they made it a Mandalorian mini season. You know?
Yeah.
The episodes were great. Those were the best episodes of that show. I mean, come on.
Which is, sad.
Right. But I mean, it's wrong that they did that, and I was honestly hoping to see him in season 3. I mean, come on, give and take a little bit. It's like, you're gonna take some of his episodes, give him a couple of episodes, introduce him into the Mandalorian. He could have, he is a bit of Mandalorian. He could have come in and try to help him out a little bit or something, like do something
to balance out like what they did with Book of Boba Fett, like do a little bit
Book of Boba
of
Fett,
that.
and they could have fit him in somehow,
Absolutely. And apparently, like, according to Temuera Morrison, the actor who plays Boba Fett, he said that he was waiting on the call, like, to come in. They told him that he was going to be in the show, and they just never called him. And that happens, it's not all promises get fulfilled, unfortunately, especially within entertainment. But it is unfortunate because you've placed this character into this world, and it almost feels like you've immediately abandoned him on Tatooine. But let's talk about Mando season 3. The primary arc of this season, they introduced this concept in Book of Boba Fett, ironically, that Din Djarin is now basically an apostate. He's exiled because he has taken off his helmet willingly in front of other people. And that was shown at the end of season 2, and basically he was cut off from his people. And the primary goal of season 3 is to reclaim that respect from his people, to basically clear his slate with his people and get right with his faith, basically. And I thought that was a cool premise. Ultimately, I think that was a really interesting premise, and having to go back to Mandalore itself, I thought that was a really cool idea.
This season didn't sit too well with some people. The way that I viewed this season was that it was a really long transition season. Like, this season is going from what The Mandalorian was and shifting it to what it's going to become. And yeah, there was just a lot that happened. Bo-Katan was a major player in this show. In this season, there was a handoff that was going on there, and it made sense to me. It really made sense to me for him kind of just handing over, pretty much handing over control of Mandalore to Bo-Katan, because that was never him. That was never what he wanted. He's always been kind of a lone wolf. He's a team player, don't get me wrong. When he needs to be a piece, he needs to be a piece in a team, he can do it. But he likes to be his lone wolf. He likes his tribe that he has between him and Grogu. And the thing that I really like about the season was that, I mean, something that we all knew all along, it was finally confirmed that Din Djarin finally adopted Grogu to be his son.
Yes, that was a very nice way to end it, especially like that last look of them, like with their own plot of land on Navarro, just like kicking back, and it looked like he was about to crack open a Corona, and while Grogu played outside, it was cute. It was a good way to end this season. And also, as much as this season was about Din Djarin getting right with his faith, this was also a season about Grogu finding his place finally with his people. He's been, ever since the Purge, ever since the Jedi Purge, this guy's been pushed around. Jedi Kelleran Beck, played by Ahmed Best, took him. That was a great scene.
Such a redemption.
Good for him.
Such a redemption for that man.
Yeah. Yeah, so good for him. He had an awesome scene. He took Grogu. At some point, the Empire had Grogu. At some point, this band of marauders had Grogu, and the Empire wanted him back. So they put a bounty on him, and then it was with Mando, and then it was with Luke, and then Mando again. And now we're finally finding where Grogu wants to be. I mean, he wanted to be a Jedi, I think. You know, I think he respects that part of his history as much as, you know, a baby can respect what they are. But
I don't think that's over. I don't
think so.
There's still...
He's gonna live 900 years.
Yeah, that's still... I believe that's still gonna be very much so a place in his life. It's just gonna develop differently. You know, kind of like how Cal Kestis. I mean, Cal Kestis had more training than Grogu, but he still didn't have... You know, he had been cut off for a bit. Yeah. Grogu, I mean, he's established a bit, and I would say that Grogu's kind, they're more adept when it comes to the Force and connecting in that kind of way. So I believe that it won't be as hard for him to really connect and still maintain that side. You know, he's gonna be a foundling, so by extension, he's gonna be like a Mandalorian Jedi, kind of, you know.
For sure. Yeah, so I also agree that he's going to have more Force training down the line, especially when he's able to talk and stuff. He's going to be able to communicate a little bit better, hopefully, in the comic seasons. But yeah, so that was a nice thing, that Grogu finally found the belonging that he has been, you know, he hasn't had since... It's been over 25 years. It's been almost 30 years at this point. Yeah, it's so 9 BBY. Yeah, so it's been over 30 years since he's had true belonging. So it's, you know, it's kind of upsetting thinking about it that way, but it is a happy ending, and it does harken back to the 4th episode of season 1, Sanctuary, where he and Din Djarin are, and also Cara Dune are in that one village, and they're just hanging out in that village for a couple of weeks. And there's that line that Cara Dune says, you know, like, you could stay here if you want, and you could clearly tell that Din wants that. You know, he wants to settle down. So this is that opportunity. It also... This season also set up a relationship between Din and some of the officers of the New Republic. And I have to imagine that some of that is because they had plans for what they were going to do in Rangers of the New Republic that are now shot because the show was canceled. So what I think happened with this season, because it is all over the place. It's not as tight of a season as the first 2 seasons. Right. And, you know, the 3rd episode is pretty much entirely a separate show altogether. That's the one where they have the Coruscant episode with Dr. Pershing and...
Yes.
I forget that girl's name. But anyway, it was a great episode, but it was a bottle episode. It was just a pilot it's like a backdoor pilot for a show that didn't exist. And yeah, so what I think happened was... that really shot them in the foot, that show got canceled, Rangers of the New Republic. So what they needed to do was take Mando, and I think what happened is they sacrificed the quality of Mando season 3 so that they can, like you said, get that bridge to where they want to be in season 4. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, it feels like a lot happened, and it was all over the place, and it was very quick. But it feels like they knew what they wanted for the future of the show, but they didn't know how to get there because the interim show of Rangers of the New Republic was canceled, so they needed to push all of that world building and whatever into Mandalorian. So I think that's what happened, and it's unfortunate because we got a weaker season of Mando, but there were still highlights, and there were, as much as I can criticize about this season, because there's a lot of things to criticize, there's a lot to love about it as well. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still like popcorn. You know, it's like pizza, you know, like even bad pizza is still pizza, you know, like, so bad Star Wars is still, you know, an adventure in the galaxy far, far away. So there's pros and cons to it.
Well, look, a bad Mando season wasn't as bad as Book of Boba Fett still, though.
I agree with that. Yes, I agree with that.
So
It's funny thinking about Book of Boba Fett in hindsight, because when it was fresh and new, like, we were talking about it with, like, mostly rose-colored glasses. You know, if you go back to our episode of Book of Boba Fett, we're mostly positive, I think. You know, I think I was probably the negative person on the podcast for a little bit of it. Like, there were some things that I did not like about it. But I think it's, like, with time, we've grown to dislike some of the choices that were made in it.
So for Book of Boba Fett, I still kind of have a little bit of a heart for it, just because I do like
too.
the actor.
I do too.
And
I love the whole Tusken Raider, like,
yes, right,
backstory.
right.
I thought that was so cool.
Like, there's still good stuff about that show that gives it redeeming qualities, but my belief, you know, and I think even like back then, I was saying that they should have marketed it in a different way. If they were gonna do it the way that they were gonna do it to set up for the season, you know, I mean, when you're talking about Book of Boba Fett, like, that really is, it's containing it, it's making it that show about that character, kind of like The Mandalorian is about The Mandalorian. Though this season focused on so much, there was a lot about Bo-Katan in this one. Like, this
season should have been called The Mandalorians, like, plural, because there was a lot of Mandalorians in this season. There's a couple things that, like, within the season that were, like, hinted at and, like, teased that didn't really go anywhere. Like, in the 7th episode, it was called The Spies. The Spies, plural. You know, like, there was someone from the Mandalorian camp that was spying on the Mandalorians, because that's the only way that news of both the normal Mando people and the more devout Mando people got along, and that news got to Gideon, but we never found out who the spy was.
Dude, I was gonna say that. I was like, did we ever find out who those spies were? Because nobody got outed out as spies.
No, we never did.
But Moff Gideon, he thanked somebody. He's like, thank you for bringing them here or something like that. But, like,
yeah.
But it was never directed to anybody in particular.
Yeah.
But at first I was thinking, like, oh, is it the people that they met, you know, that were living on Mandalore?
The 3 Mandalorians that were on Mandalore. But at that point, they didn't, like, Moff Gideon found out that the 2 Mando tribes came together on Navarro before they went to Mandalore. So it couldn't have been those 3 being the spies. You know what I'm saying? But it is curious that these guys have been on Mandalore since the Empire days, and they haven't noticed that there's still an Imperial presence, you know, clearly on Mandalore, like, right next door to you. Like, you don't hear the TIE fighters every now and then?
Right. Yeah, that's... Yeah, they would be like, hey, look, there's some Imperial here, so...
They shouldn't have been blindsided by that, but
right.
I don't know. It's weird. It's just like, I feel like they had plans. They had clear plans, but I feel like they backed out of it almost, you know? Like, I feel like there was a lot of speculation that the armorer was the spy. And it almost felt like it, you know, if you go back and rewatch the series, it still feels like she should have been the spy, you know, because she even leaves the planet right before all the chaos starts in episode 8, you know?
And it was kind of setting up for that.
Yeah.
Kind of, like, it could have been.
It feels like they, like, chickened out of it and just filmed something else, you know? Like, they just filmed a happy ending. And I'm okay with that, but I am feeling let down story-wise, because I want to know. It's like they tease a lot, but they don't explain anything. And there's a lot of stuff that just kind of happens in the series that you're expecting to make this huge dramatic, like, you know, to have some weight put on it in, like, future episodes. So early on, Bo-Katan sees the mythosaur in the mines beneath Mando, or in the waters beneath Mandalore, and that just, you know, you expect that to be like the big new rallying cry that all these Mandalorians are going to get behind, because she's seen a creature out of legend, and that's something, you know, that's too cool to believe. But then they don't really do anything with that when they're fighting the Empire, and I was just like, all right, so maybe they're saving that for next season.
With the way that the armor was, like, Bo-Katan was like, yeah, you know, I seen the mythosaur. She's like, sure, if that's what you believe you saw. Like, she clearly didn't believe it. Yeah.
But it was interesting because she immediately changed her tune on Navarro. Like, it seemed as if she was a spy, you know, like she was clearly orchestrating events to go back to Mandalore and face Giancarlo Esposito, the chicken
Right,
man.
like all of a sudden she was cool with there being Mandalorians that didn't wear their helmets all the time.
It was just strange. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's one of those things that we'll probably get some information about down the line, but it is frustrating, you know, being just like passively viewing this, being led one way and then being totally led astray for something that's a little less than for something that's subpar to what you're expecting to get.
I will say that there is a little bit of an endearing feeling, like kind of seeing them get along for like a bigger cause other than themselves. You know, they want
Yes,
to
I'm not saying
no, yeah,
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Yeah,
right. But there should have been a little bit more development to, I guess, explain the thought process.
Yeah.
But Grogu in this season did have a lot of development. It shows that he has an understanding of his surroundings, and he can kind of communicate, and he does understand when he's being spoken to. He's not just like a baby that you go to like say, oh, go do this, and they don't listen to you because they don't understand you. He just can't speak, but he understands, you know, when Mando gets caught, when he goes to Mandalore the first time to go into the waters, he gets caught by I don't even know what that was, some sort of creature, but he gets caught, and he tells Grogu to leave, and Grogu leaves, and he goes to Bo-Katan, and he points to where Bo-Katan was because Din Djarin showed him where they were headed the first time around, and he picked that up and he remembered it, so he understands. There was a lot of development this season. If there was any development, it was mostly for Grogu, if anything.
Yeah, Grogu and probably Bo-Katan were like the two
Yes.
that had the most expressed growth. Another thing that was introduced early on in the season is like Grogu got that little chess piece that I thought for sure was going to like come into play later. Like he was going to take a bullet or take a blaster fire for Din, and then, you know, like, oh, I had the chess piece on. That never happened. Another thing that really bugged me about the finale, I mean, I don't want to like harp on about like how much I dislike stuff, but I have to bring this up. So in episode 7, they introduce all of these clones of Gideon, and you're like, oh wow, are these gonna play a big part in the next episode? Nope. They just immediately get destroyed at the start of episode 8. Like, what's the point of even showing us that? It's just, it was such a letdown for me. I don't know.
So I myself, I have a belief that there's a possibility that those weren't the only clones. I mean, sure, he was upset, but I mean, you know, he was trying to, you know, that was some of the clones he had. I mean, if I was working on something, I would be upset even if it wasn't completely destroyed. And I was thinking that there's a possibility that the Moff Gideon that died wasn't the actual Moff Gideon.
That's a possibility, yeah, for sure. Because he was saying
That could have
that
been a
these...
clone.
Yeah, that could have been a clone. He was saying that these clones that they destroyed were specifically bred to be force sensitive. So clearly he had tried to clone before, and he probably cloned himself before just to try it. And for whatever reason, you know, they weren't like force sensitive clones. But it would have been interesting seeing a force sensitive Moff Gideon clone. Maybe we'll see that in the future. We don't know. But at this point, I kind of want the show to move away from Moff Gideon. You know, after 3 seasons of him being the big bad guy, I kind of want something a little different for Mando season 4.
What'd you think about that last episode where Grogu was kind of throwing down in a fight a little bit? Like, you know, he wasn't actually like dishing out any punches, but the dodging and using the force to, like, he was showing that he had some smarts when it came to fighting. Like, he knew to get this weapon away from this person, or to block this weapon, or to pull this, and he, you know, he was kind of jumping around and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, look at Grogu's fighting right now.
I would say that they did really well with the puppet.
Dude,
I'm very surprised that it looked as good as it did with the puppet. I think some of that they probably should have gone CGI, but I respect that they kept it all puppet, or at least as much as I could tell. It was all the Grogu puppet, but it was fun. Like he he was able to take on 3 Praetorian guards. Obviously, he had a little help with Bo-Katan and Din, but I liked that the final battle had the 3 of them kind of like taking turns against different villains,
Yes. Yeah, it was crazy seeing the Praetorian guards because, I mean, we've seen them before, in past Star Wars movies, but they've always been in such a passive role. But in The Last Jedi, they were like almost like samurai, And so that's what we got in this. And I was like, wow, they really like brought these guys. And I know that a lot of people didn't really care for that fight in The Last Jedi, but I actually really liked that fight. I thought the Praetorian guards were really cool. And it was cool seeing them.
Yeah, I do too. Here's the thing. If you're going to analyze the fight in The Last Jedi as much as you're going to analyze it, you need to, put that level of analysis on some of the fight scenes in the original trilogy and see how well they stack up. Because the choreography, man. Like there's a scene, I just rewatched Return of the Jedi, and fantastic movie. I love it. But there's a scene where Vader, randomly just kind of like falls to the ground in like the perfect position for Luke Skywalker to chop his arm off. Like if that happened in Last Jedi, that would be like people would complain and complain and complain about that. But, it's just people. They want something to hate.
Dude, New Hope. That fight between Vader and Obi-Wan.
That's a real harrowing fight, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, harrowingly boring, that's
but we love it. Real. It's not right. It's good because it's niche and it was the first of its kind, and we don't even care because it's awesome.
Exactly. So for me, the way that I get by that is the meaning behind it. Obi-Wan went into that like he meant to do that. So I mean, I'm not gonna get too much into that. I mean, we're gonna eventually make an episode about A New Hope. But yeah, for me, with a lot of the criticisms that Star Wars has, that washes over me. For me, I'm sure. Like, yeah. You didn't like that? Well, guess what? I don't care because I enjoyed it. The criticisms that the sequels trilogy have, there's a lot that I agree with, but I'll leave it at that.
But at the same time, there's a lot to love about the sequels as well. There's a lot of really, really awesome scenes that we're gonna eventually talk about on the show. So I'm desperately looking forward to talking about the sequels because one of my favorite movies in recent memory was The Force Awakens. Like that for me was just like it opened up Star Wars in a way that I never expected to open the galaxy back up. It was just such a fun time being a fan after The Force Awakens. I don't know, but yeah, we should do A No Hope soon. Like that'd be really awesome.
We should. So what about when that ship gets crashed into that Imperial base and the fire comes up and Grogu blocks it with the Force?
Oh yeah, that was beautiful.
Was super cool.
That was cool. Did you ever watch Rebels?
I did watch Rebels.
Did you ever finish Rebels?
I did finish. So I did finish Rebels, and I know we'll have an episode about Rebels. Dude, I really, really enjoy Rebels, but there's something about Clone Wars that does it for me more.
I hear you 100%. What was great about Rebels is that it followed a singular cast, where Clone Wars bounced around a lot, which both are fine, and that's why I kind of like what they're doing with Bad Batch right now is they have, it feels like Clone Wars, but they have almost like a Rebels. It's written like Rebels because you're following a single cast of characters, but it's a immediately branching off of Clone Wars, so it has both of those feels. But anyway, I'm talking. I brought Rebels up for a reason. There's that scene at the end. I don't want to get too much into it because spoilers for people who haven't seen it. But there's a great scene where there's a Jedi character who does like stop the fire to save their loved ones in one of the last episodes, and it's so powerful. It's a beautiful scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars, and this clearly harkens back to it. I think this is probably the second time it's been done in a Star Wars show or whatever, but it looks really, they made it look really good. And I like how they panned back with Grogu You know, like it was like you saw Bo-Katan's shield, and then you saw Din kind of like on the ground, but like Grogu's hand starts like appearing, and you start seeing like, oh, they're in a bubble of fire, and then they zoom out and they show like the actual like sphere that he's created to like protect them. Oh, it's so cool.
Grogu is pretty much like a mini Gandalf, you know. He said, "You shall not pass fire."
That's, you know, I didn't think about it that way. Let's talk a little bit about the Empire. We're going a little over an hour, but that's okay because our Mando episodes usually take a little longer. There's an interesting scene in episode 7 where we start seeing like the Shadow Council of like different Imperial leaders that are kind of spread across the galaxy. You see Brendel Hux, who is, you know, General Hux's father in the sequels. You see Brendel Hux, he's heading a project called like Project Necromancer, and you kind of have to assume that has something to do with raising the Emperor from the dead.
And I mean, and this season was like pretty much setting that up a bit with the whole cloning stuff.
Oh, for sure. They're going really hard with that, especially like if you're watching both Bad Batch and Mando season 3, like right now they're going really hard with like trying to explain like what the Empire is doing with cloning. And it's really cool. You know, like a lot of people have an issue with the Rise of Skywalker for bringing Palpatine back. Rightly so. You know, like if you have your issues with that, that's fine.
It felt like a cop-out.
It did feel like a cop-out, and I think it's partly because they had expected Snoke to be the big bad guy early on, and they suddenly were without a big bad guy. But anyway, when it comes to, you know, stuff you don't like with Star Wars, the general rule of thumb, if you don't like something about Star Wars, consume more Star Wars, because they'll inevitably answer the issue that you have with it. Oh, you think it's dumb that they did this in parsecs when that's not a unit of time? Well, eventually they made Solo, and they explained like what the Kessel Run is and like how many parsecs it takes to get out of it. This happens again and again and again with Star Wars. If there's ever an issue, like with Palpatine showing back up, they'll devote time to answering that. Like there was the novel Shadow of the Sith that explained Rey's origin with her family on the run from the Sith, and it's so good. It's so well it bridges the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy so well. It's one of my favorite Star Wars novels. If you ever get a chance to read Adam Christopher's Shadow of the Sith, highly recommend it. But that's kind of the whole issue, or the whole thing with Star Wars, is that if you ever have an issue with it, inevitably it will be answered down the line.
I mean, that's what Clone Wars did too. It
100%.
It patched up a lot of issues in the prequels, and it explained a lot.
Oh, 100%. Because there's a lot that happens between episode 2 and episode 3 that is just a huge jump, and it's a leap in logic, you know? And as kids, we don't really recognize it. But when we're watching the Clone Wars and we're thinking, oh yeah, how did that happen? Clone Wars answers it. Clone Wars answers a lot of that stuff. So that's my motto when it comes to Star Wars that I'm not huge on. Rule of thumb, they're going to answer it in some sort of prequel novel, or in this case, a prequel TV show.
This season had a good bit of cameos in it.
Yes it did. There was the one episode with a whole bunch of cameos.
Yeah, we really did. And we had Tim Meadows. So we got a cameo from him. We got a cameo from Jack Black. We got a cameo from Lizzo.
Surprising.
And your boy Christopher Lloyd. I'm like, what is going on? That
was
one
that
episode we got them.
Yes, that was all in one episode. Holy cow.
Christopher Lloyd, Lizzo, and Jack Black all in one episode. I'm like, what is going on here? This is like that episode literally was almost like, man, there's a bunch of people that really want to be in Star Wars. Let's put them in this episode.
I feel like with time, I'm gonna like that episode more. I think I've only watched it once at this point, but I was just like, I don't know if this is for me.
I mean, it was cool though to see battle droids again.
Yes. So that is a fun thing with Star Wars, is that there's so much room for adventures. You know, just like one-off adventures. And that's what this was for the most part, because really all they needed to do on that planet was go talk to the Mandalorians who were parked outside. But instead they went inside and had this little adventure in basically like Epcot.
Yeah, dude, that really did seem kind of weirdly like a futuristic Disney city.
Yeah, it had Tomorrowland vibes. It had like...
It really did.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. But yeah, there was a lot of cameos in that episode, and it was fine, you know? Like, it was... I have no issue with that. What I do have an issue with is like cameos for the sake of it, if that makes sense. Like, the Jack Black and Lizzo and Christopher Lloyd, the end was just like almost like it was strangely like the resolution of like a Scooby-Doo episode.
Oh, dude, I was about to say that. It was like very Scooby-Doo. Like I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for Mando and Bo-Katan.
That's hilarious.
It was funny. Yeah, because he was messing with the programming of the battle droids because they were all supposed to. They were serving the city. Honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. If you're gonna take droids that were once used for war and you're using them to serve people, that is a formula for bad things to happen.
Yes,
I would be like, I don't care if there's a bunch of unused droids. Just destroy them. Them things were used for war. That means that default programming is in there somewhere. No matter what happens.
That's why I was so confused early on in the season when they brought IG-11 back, and like Mando's like, Mando learned all the wrong lessons about droids. Like he was supposed to learn that not all droids are bad, but he clearly went and said, no, only this droid is good. Bring him back to life. Do everything in your power. And then when he came back to life, he tried killing Grogu again. And then he continued on his quest to try to bring IG-11 back. It was nuts. It was absolute chaos. I was like, what are you doing, man? Oh, we didn't bring it up. But I love the suit that they made for him.
The IG suit for Grogu, and Din Djarin's like, nah, man, like what the heck? And Grogu was smart enough to actually use the thing, and I love the fact when he kept on hitting no. He's like no. Especially like when he was pushing those like two Mandalorians away when they were fighting, he kept on hitting no.
Yeah, no, that was really good. I kind of wish that they kept that suit around a little longer. Like it would only really lasted like 2 episodes max.
I know Grogu was definitely using like Diva from Overwatch mode with it.
It was cool. Like it was a genuine upgrade for Grogu, at least for a little bit. Like keep him in that suit for a little bit. But unfortunately, that's not what happened.
Yeah, and it was gifted by our boy Grief Karga, played by Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers just loves being in that show. You could genuinely see he enjoys that character that he plays.
Yeah, for sure. A lot happens on Navarro. Like, I don't know if you remember, like, going back to the first season, Navarro is like a pit. Yeah,
Navarro
that place
looked
is
like
the slumps.
It went from looking like some old dusty west town from some like really nice built up space, It looked really nice. It was green. Dude, there was like no sun the last time, in the first season. And all of a sudden the sun is out shining, looking beautiful over there. They got plots of land, there was like lava pits and stuff at Navarro, like the first season. That lava river that they had to like row down.
That was something. It went from Westworld to Best World. Like really quick.
Yeah, no, it was, and he went from just being some guy to being like with the supreme magistrate or something like that.
Yeah. The high magistrate.
He kept on like correcting people on it.
Oh gosh. When
Bro,
they
that
first
pirate
showed
looked crazy, that tree beard looking pirate.
Oh yeah, dude, he looked like
something
did he look
out
like?
of
He looked like
Spaceballs.
He looked like pickled seaweed.
Dude, he looked like a parody of a Star Wars character in Star Wars. Like,
you bring up Spaceballs. He did look like Pizza the Hut.
if he was seaweed,
Yeah,
dude, that he looks so crazy. But
apparently he's gonna be in the new show Skeleton Crew. Like,
right, so that was almost like it was like an introduction and kind of like a mini launch for that show too.
Yeah,
just like in season 2 of Mandalorian, that the Jedi episode was what it did for Ahsoka. And
also, so I'm very excited for Ahsoka. They announced today that Dave Filoni was the writer for all 8 episodes. Yeah, so that's exciting. Yeah, what else? There's so much that happens in this season that like I should have written notes. But like,
right.
there's
But honestly, where we're at thinking wise, that was almost like kind of like how the season was.
Yeah, it was all over the place. It was
all over
crazy.
the place. So it's so easy to jump around because it did seem very jumbled up. But man, every time they go back to, and you touched a little bit on it, every time they go back and do a scene from Order 66, they always like knock those scenes out the park. And yeah, your boy Ahmed Best, like he was so good in that episode. Dude, the way that like he was dual wielding those lightsabers and like deflecting blasters, I was like, man, like I went back and I watched just that scene a couple times because of how cool it looked.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely it's a thrill to have Ahmed Best in like an actual canon role outside of Jar Jar, because he had that show. Oh, I forget the name of the show, but he had like it's like a children's like game show where it was like Jedi challenges for kids.
Right.
And he played Kelleran Beck the Jedi. So this is that character in canon. So this is really cool for me, or for viewers of Star Wars in general.
Yes. Well, a lot of people thought that he was kind of given the short end of the stick, especially with Jar Jar Binks. And honestly, Ahmed Best is a really big fan of Star Wars, and the fact that they gave him that redemption, being, he was in the Star Wars universe and still being a fan of Star Wars, and allowing him to be like a really cool character. And honestly, it's cool because what his actual character is pretty much the person that's over the Jedi trials. So yeah. I thought that was really cool. And he's known as like one of the best like lightsaber duelists. Like, I mean, he can, if they would have put him up against Anakin, he might have won.
Yeah, that'd be cool. You know what I kind of want? Now that I think about it, like as cool as it is having like Ahmed Best play a Jedi, I kind of want to see what Jar Jar's up to. I mean, he's still, as far as we know, alive and well at this time period. Like, what's my boy Jar Jar up to?
Where did he go? What is he doing? Is he in the water? Underwater?
Is he in Navarro, perhaps? Nobody knows.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Or actually,
they never addressed it in any of the books? He's never popped up in any of the books?
He pops up in a small interlude chapter in, I think it's the second or third Aftermath book. And so that's a little bit after the Empire's like fallen in Return of the Jedi. But basically he's a nobody in that book. He's just like making kids laugh. He's like almost like the town clown. And they really dragged him through the mud. But he's still alive, dude. He's still alive.
All right, so we're just gonna remember Ahmed Best as Kelleran. We're just gonna remember him as that, okay? This is him, I know that Jar Jar Binks exists, but we're gonna remember him as something that's better,
For sure. No, I need my 3-season Jar Jar Binks show. Like, come on, Disney Plus. What are we doing?
Man,
the Book of Jar Jar.
But yeah,
the scroll of Jar Jar.
This season was all over the place, man. It was crazy.
At the end of the day, I kind of look at Star Wars as events that happen, in this galaxy. And that's kind of what I love about this book, going back to Star Wars Timelines, is that it treats all events equally, It doesn't matter if this was introduced in a short story, if it changed the galaxy in some meaningful way, or if there's a character that's introduced that helps out this other character, it's given some precedence within, the historicity of this galaxy. And that's what I like about it. That's kind of my approach to Star Wars that I don't think is necessarily good on a critical level. It's just something that happens that helps expand the universe. And you're never going to have like good content every single time. You need stinkers to kind of lift up the good stuff, But
drum up the good stuff.
Yeah, but no, it's at the end of the day, I didn't dislike Mando season 3.
I didn't. Dude, every single season of Mandalorian had its good bits and its bad bits,
Yeah.
This one was it was different because it was, for me, I saw it as a transition season between what it was before and what their goal is for the future.
now we know, it's been announced since the last time we recorded, with Ahsoka coming up and Skeleton Crew, this is all branched out of The Mandalorian, you know? So, and eventually this will lead into Dave Filoni's Mandalorian film, or, you know, the Mandoverse film that will culminate all these different stories into probably like a adaptation of Heir to the Empire, with Thrawn coming back and all of that. So, yeah, we have some good stuff ahead, and clearly they know where they're going, which is a good thing.
I know it's gonna blow my mind when that does happen and we get like a Infinity War-esque thing where like all these elements start connecting. You got Mando coming in, and then there's Ahsoka. You know, you gotta throw Boba in there. Come on, man. Like we
Boba
need
Fett
Boba
on his
there.
Rancor. Yeah, Boba Fett on his Rancor.
Dude. We need to see that again, man. With your boy Machete, you know.
Forgot about that.
Hey, man, bro, he was the Rancor whisperer, so you know he's got to be there, man.
Yeah, we need Fennec Shand back.
For real. I actually do want to see that character again.
She's cool.
So, but yeah, that'll be cool. So what do you think? Do you think that we're gonna have a long period before we see a Mando season 4?
It's tough to say.
I know that The Last of Us season 2 is in the works, but that's a far way off. I feel like they could pump out another season of The Mandalorian before we even see a season 2 of The Last of Us.
The thing is we don't there's a lot of stuff that's just in the air right now. So we know that Ahsoka has finished filming. We know that Skeleton Crew has finished filming. We have no idea there's no news on Obi-Wan season 2. There's no news on Book of Boba Fett season 2. And currently there's not a lot of buzz for Mando season 4. So I don't even think it's been written. And right now, I don't know if you have heard, as of today, the Writers Guild of America has gone on strike. So currently no projects are being written. So if it's written and ready to go, it'll be in production. But if it's not written yet, we gotta wait because the writers are on strike. And that's a pretty big deal. Like, I don't know if you remember, back in 2007, 2008, there was a writer's strike back then, and that kind of derailed a lot of Hollywood. Like, one of my favorite shows of all, like, back in the day was Heroes. Heroes had one of the best first seasons of any show ever.
I remember that.
And then the writers left. Oh, it was a good show, though. But yeah, the writers left after the first season, and the show tanked. That was right at the writer's strike. There's other stuff like Transformers 2, you know, arguably like one of the worst in the series. That was a product of an unfinished script. Same with Quantum of Solace, the James Bond film. That was an unfinished script that MGM wanted to push during that writer's strike. So hopefully what, you know, Hollywood has learned about previous writer's strikes, you know, most recently the 2007 one, is to just hold off, wait until everyone's happy, wait until the strike's over before pushing more content out. Because right now I'm personally worried because all three of the Star Wars movies that they have announced very recently, like in the past month, you know, there's the Rey Skywalker one that's 15 years down the line, there's the Mandoverse one, and then there's the Dawn of the Jedi one, which sounds really awesome. These are all in the writing phases. So right now, those have stalled, you know, I hope that, you know, they just pause. They put the brakes on that for the time being. So yeah, I don't know where Mando season 4 lies. You know, I don't know if... Oh, you know what? No. I just remembered that Jon Favreau said that he has already written season 4 of Mandalorian and that it fits with Ahsoka. So that's good to like start filming whenever they want to start filming. So don't mind what I said about Mando there. But, you know, for the stuff that isn't written yet, I hope that they don't like push it out before it's like baked, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. Wait until all the dust is kind of settled before working on those projects.
Exactly. Yeah, and just because the show is written, like just because Mando season 4 is written doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be rewritten. And if it needs to be rewritten, which I would prefer, because, you know, season 3 kind of felt like the product of a writer's strike. I would prefer they just take their time and wait for it. But, you know, I hope they don't wait too long.
Right. So, any last thoughts about Mando season 3?
Yeah, Mando season 3 has a lot going for it, has a lot that it sets up, has a lot that, you know, like it sets up to like spike and then just kind of like lets the ball fall across the other side of the net. And that's fine, you know. It's not bad. It's not great, but it was enjoyable week in and week out. And I'm excited for more Star Wars at the end of the day.
Well said. Yeah, season 3, I enjoyed it. It wasn't without its faults. It felt jumbled a bit, but I do believe that it's setting up for a really good season 4, and we'll see when that comes out.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us here for our 55th episode of Project Geekology. We hope you enjoyed our show today. If you did, please be sure to follow us on social media and give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast app that you're listening to us on. And yeah, you can find more of us in the show notes down below. And what are we covering, Anthony?
Let's keep this Star Wars train going and cover A New Hope. It's been a while since we've covered a Star Wars movie, so that's what we're going to hit.
Let's do it. Guys, have a good one.
Bye.